This is Greg Andrick bringing you another Business Freedom Conversation post. So, hot off the presses, the Federal Reserve of New York did a survey about wages and what workers want. And the average American worker wants $78,000 to go to a new job. It's up 8% from last year. It's a big change, and it appears that the workers are more aggressive because they're now having to do things like pay their rent, pay their student loans, deal with inflation, and they're burning off their stimulus money. So 32% of employers say they're looking to hire, and they're having to deal with this disparity between the softening job market and the expectations because of inflation and new commitments that are being turned back on. 23% of employers still report, down from 25%, but 23% of employers are reporting that they get no response to their job ads. This is according to the NFIB, National Foundation of Independent Businesses, which runs surveys every single month. So if you are one of the 23% that's not getting any response to your job ads, you've got bigger problems than your wages and job offering. It's a social media age. You probably need to fix your footprint out there in social media. But be that as it may, we have two converging forces, one where the workers have a higher expectation and the employers are softening because of the economic outlook. So take a look at this. It's a 5-minute video from Yahoo Finance on the dynamics of the labor market. And it's still, we're in a very interesting place. But as we all know, we're kind of heading towards 2024, which looks like it's going to be kind of a rough year. So take a look at this, figure out how to fit your business into it. This is Greg Andrick, Business Freedom Conversation. I'll catch you on the next one.
The high inflation as they demand larger raises. A new employment survey out from the New York Federal Reserve found that the average reservation wage, or the lowest wage Americans are willing to accept for a new job, climbed to a record high of $78,645, which is up almost 8% in the last year. But will employers be able to deliver these increasing wage demands? Let's bring in Young Umar, BMO Wealth Management U.S. Chief Investment Officer, to discuss this. Good to have you on the show here. Now, we know that rising wages is something that Fed is saying is really the antithesis to them reaching that 2% inflation target. How are you viewing sort of this reservation wage versus the realities we're currently facing?
Rochelle, it's great to be here. Yeah, we do think the labor market is actually coming into balance here gradually, but there's a lagged effect and you see it in things like this reservation wage. You see it in union labor negotiations, that a lot of these demands or expectations are built based on the labor market as it used to be over the past 12 months. But companies, when they're looking to hire and looking to set wages now, they're looking at somewhat of a slowdown going forward. They're looking at the PMI numbers come down. You can see other areas such as job openings start to fall. So we have a little bit of a mismatch right now, but it is indicative of the labor market gradually coming into somewhat more of a balance, but still with a little bit of stickiness in wages.
I mean, even from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're showing both the likelihood of switching jobs and expectations of being offered a new job continuing to fall. So then how tight is the labor market, and how much of that should really be broken down sector by sector as we try and get an understanding of the nuances here?
Well, the sector by sector is tremendously important. As you say, there are some sectors where labor demand is not as tight, and that I would say it's maybe already in balance, but there are still sectors where labor demand is extremely tight. We saw that just recently in the UPS negotiations for UPS workers and drivers, that there was a lot of bargaining power on the side of the workers. So it really does matter sector by sector, industry by industry. But overall, we do think it's coming more into balance. We do see various measures of wage growth starting to fall, job openings falling, as I mentioned. So it's a process, and it's something that's going to take some time here.
And so then for some of these industries that are still looking to, bump up their employees, then when they look at this number, this reservation number, how should they view it? I mean, when they're looking at other options like perhaps AI to fill in some of the gaps that are existing right now in their labor force?
Well, I think companies are definitely aggressively looking at various options to fill in those gaps. They've struggled for a couple of years now with finding labor, and it's something where a lot of companies have been able to figure out stopgap measures or temporary solutions. But really, the tightness of the labor market, there's a structural element to it. It is coming more into balance, but a lot of companies are realizing that they're just going to have to figure out other ways to make sure their businesses can run efficiently.
And we certainly see the Wall Street Journal noting from ZipRecruiter's information for the postings for more than 20,000 job titles, the average pay for a majority of roles has declined from last year. So then is that power shifting? We talked about this balance coming back into play. What does this mean then for employers who are trying to decide, do I perhaps, spend the money to take on a new worker versus try and upskill my current employees?
Yeah, as you mentioned, that's a very interesting survey that the average wage that's being offered by companies has fallen over the past year. I think it is indicative of the labor market coming more into balance and some of the extreme measures that companies were really desperate to take to fill roles is really coming off now. And a lot of that's because we're seeing some economic softness. We're seeing some areas where the Fed interest rate increases are starting to take hold and have an effect on the economy. We see it in services and manufacturing starting to slow a bit. So I do think that companies are being more rational in terms of what their requirements are in terms of what they're being able to offer for labor. For people, you also see similar measures. People are less willing to switch jobs here. Some of those job opening measures or job switching measures are starting to come off a bit. And I think people are starting to gradually realize the labor market isn't quite as tight as it used to be in a lot of areas. It's still tight, but the extreme demand and competition for labor, the edge of that is really coming off. And I think gradually, as this comes into balance, workers will reset their expectations a bit, and those sort of peak numbers that we're seeing recently for wage expectations will probably level off here in companies as well as they look to fill, perhaps look to fill roles in other ways or look to technology solutions. We do think that balance is going to come into play here, especially as the economy slows over the coming quarters.
I appreciate you joining us with your insights. Youngwoo Ma there, BMO Wealth Management US Chief Investment Officer. Thank you so much.